Chapter 6 Lost and Found. Jesse was at the computer, the connection working, and Professor Anderson's face was back on the screen. Daisy paced behind Jesse, holding Emmy, who had not let them put her down since she had revived from her swoon. She was still wrapped in Daisy's sweatshirt with a purple knee sock wound around her neck like a muffler. The little dragon was suckling on a stalk of broccoli like a leafy green pacifier. Jesse clicked the mouse and said, "Can you tell us about hoarding, please?" They heard the professor clear his throat noisily. Then his bushy eyebrows flew up and he began to speak. Hoarding, when it comes to dragons, is a misnomer. "Who the heck is misnomer?" Jesse muttered. Daisy reached for the dictionary, but the professor beat them to the definition. "The word means wrong name," he said. "Hoarding implies greed, and dragons are the least greedy of all creatures." Then how come it talks about hoarding in his book? Jesse wondered aloud. The professor continued. In the dark years that followed the time before, many believed dragons looted castle treasuries because they were greedy for riches. Now we know that is not the case. Dragons require the properties of silver and gold to maintain their healthy bones and muscles. They quite literally absorb the minerals in their skin. "So like vitamins?" Daisy asked. "Yes, think of them as vitamins," said the professor. "Will that be all for today?" "No," said Jesse. "Our baby dragon jumped in a brook." He blurted out. "She said she saw a bad man named St. George." "Slowly," said the professor. "You're slurring your words. I do not understand Slurvarian." Jesse took a deep breath and repeated himself, slowly and clearly this time. The professor furrowed his brow. "Are you absolutely sure?" Daisy and Jesse looked at each other and nodded. The professor's eyes lit up and he smiled. "My, what a precocious dragon you have. It sounds to me as if your dragon was scrying. Marvelous!" "What's scrying?" Jesse asked. "Dragons gaze into pools or streams, and if the circumstances, the position of the sun, sky, planets in their rotation are all right, they see pictures foretelling the future. The act is called scrying. Your hatchling is very young to be scrying. She must be a very powerful dragon. But powerful or not, she still requires your protection." "Who is St. George?" asked Daisy. The professor's face darkened. "Don't you know? What are they teaching children these days?" For a brief moment, the professor disappeared from the screen. Jesse and Daisy cried out. Almost instantly, he appeared again and said, "Why, St. George is the dragon slayer." Jesse clutched Daisy's shoulder. "Therefore, you must protect your dragon from him at all costs," said the professor. "Remember, it's no accident that she has come to you. She chose you. Whatever you do, do not betray the trust." Then the computer made the irritating grinding noise and went blank. At that very moment, the back door downstairs slammed. The cousins started. Uncle Joe called up from the kitchen. "Hey, kids! What do we feel like for dinner?" "What's the plan?" Jesse asked Daisy. Daisy said, "We tell him what we feel like for dinner. Then we ask for a favor. We ask him to keep a pet, to be exact." Daisy yelled down that they felt like chicken tenders and french fries. Then the cousins put their heads together to discuss the next part of their plan. It wouldn't be easy. Uncle Joe didn't mind pets. Aunt Maggie did. It wasn't that she had anything against animals. It's just that they seemed to have a really bad luck with pets in their family. So it was going to take some doing to convince Aunt Maggie and Uncle Joe that violating the no pet law was a good idea. They were starting with the easy parent. "He's really distracted with his latest project, so he should be a pushover," said Daisy. Push, Uncle Joe. Emmy said, Go, go, Joe. Emmy, Daisy said sternly, you cannot yak. You cannot say a single word. Pretend you're a cute, dumb animal. Pretend you're the cutest animal in the universe and the perfect pet for this house. Emmy, cute? Emmy promised. Like Joe. Like limestone. Like rock dock. Did Emmy just make her first joke? Jessie said, wrapping Emmy more tightly in Daisy's sweatshirt. No joking, no yakking, Daisy said as she opened the door of Jessie's room. The aroma of fast food wafted from the kitchen as they went downstairs. Uncle Joe was not much of a cook. They heard him setting the table for dinner. Hey guys, he said when he saw them. Did you have fun gallivanting? Yeah, Poppy, we found something interesting in the dell, Daisy said. Something real nifty, said Jessie. Uncle Joe opened the refrigerator. Then he stopped and looked around the kitchen. You guys clean today? Daisy winked at Jessie. We did, she said, after we raided the refrigerator. We got it back to apple pie order, Jessie said. Uncle Joe gave them a funny look. He took out ketchup and mustard and slowly brought it on the table. Uncle Joe put ketchup and mustard on most things he ate. Aunt Maggie liked to say Uncle Joe ate like an 8-year-old. Jessie found himself checking the ceiling to make sure the relish splat hadn't reappeared. It hadn't. So, what interesting and nifty thing did you find? Uncle Joe asked. Jessie uncovered Emmy's head and held out the bundle in his arms. Emmy settled her big green eyes on Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe put down a fistful of forks and knives. Isn't she neat? Asked Daisy. Wow. He took a step closer. You found her at the dell, you say? The cousins nodded. They were now crossing their fingers on all 4 of their hands and holding their breath. Uncle Joe took off his rock star cap and gave his ponytail a tug. No one would say that looks like your typical barn critter, he said. It was true. Emmy didn't like any of the critters that lived in the barn. Emmy looked exactly like what she was, but since Uncle Joe didn't believe in dragons, he couldn't be sure what he was looking at. She's kind of cute for a lizard, Uncle Joe said, smiling at Emmy, as Emmy again fixed her big eyes on him. You're a little cutie, he said to her. He leaned close to her and cocked his head at the same angle as hers. She looks like a deep thinker, doesn't she? Makes you wonder what she'd say if she could talk. The cousins chewed their lips and hoped Emmy wouldn't take the cue. She's really tame, said Daisy. I think she's a green basilic from Costa Rica, said Jessie, or maybe an Indian sun skink. Well, whatever she is, she's a long way from home, said Uncle Joe. She must be somebody's pet that ran away. Maybe you should post some signs around town. She certainly looks valuable. Daisy groaned. Jessie bristled. He did not want to put up signs all over Gold Mine City. Emmy was theirs, or they were hers. Either way, she didn't belong to anyone else. She had chosen the 2 of them. Hadn't Professor Anderson said so? Uncle Joe looked at Daisy, then at Jessie. Ask yourselves this, guys. How would you feel if you had lost a rare pet like this and the person who found her didn't make any effort to return her to you? It was hard to argue with Uncle Joe about this. Okay, but if we put up signs and nobody claims her after a week, can we keep her? Daisy asked. Can we? Can we, Poppy? Jessie joined in the chorus. Can we please, Uncle Joe? We named her Emmy, said Daisy. It's short for Emerald. Because she's green and precious, said Daisy. Uncle Joe looked from one cousin to the other and back at Emmy. Guys, this isn't exactly fluffy, you know. He was talking about Aunt Maggie's childhood pet, the sheepdog that she loved above all other dogs. Where would you keep her? Daisy smiled and winked at Jessie. Uncle Joe was showing signs of softening. "Isn't my Poppy adorable?" she asked Jessie. Jessie wasn't sure that adorable was the right word for Uncle Joe, but under the circumstances, he nodded vigorously. "Where would you keep her, guys?" Uncle Joe repeated. "For the time being," Jessie said, "she's been in my sock drawer." "That wouldn't cut it in the long run. She'd need a cage," said Uncle Joe. The idea of putting Emmy in a cage made Jessie slightly ill, but he nodded with Daisy. Then Daisy clasped her hands together and fell to her knees. "If you say you really want us to keep Emmy, Mom will give in. I know she will." Uncle Joe closed his eyes and sighed. "I'll discuss it with her when she calls tomorrow. No promises. I'll do my best, and you guys have to put up bound signs. If nobody claims her, then we'll see. And you have to promise you'll go online and research what kind of a lizard she is. Find out what she needs to be happy and healthy." Jessie came close to saying, "We already have." After dinner, Jessie emailed his parents. "Dear Mom and Dad, guess what? We found a Costa Rican basilic, or maybe a sun skink. We're putting up signs, and if no one claims her, Uncle Joe says we might get to keep her if Aunt Maggie says it's okay. Could you pretty please email Aunt Maggie and tell her you think it's okay?" He heard Emmy snoring in the sock drawer, then finished the email. "For now, she's sleeping in my sock drawer. She takes after Grandma. She really seems to have a thing for socks. Love, Jessie." Just as he was logging off, Daisy came into the room and showed Jessie a rough layout of the sign she had made on a page torn out of her wildflower notebook. "Brilliant," said Jessie. "Thanks," said Daisy. "You take care of the words, I'll handle the picture. Plan?" "Plan," said Jessie, and they both set to work. Daisy measured Emmy the best she could from horn to tail. 4 inches, Daisy said to Jessie. Jessie nodded and added the information to the sign on his computer. Daisy went downstairs and came back with Uncle Joe's camera. "I'm going to try very hard to make the worst photo I can possibly take," she announced to Jessie. Jessie squinted at the computer screen and murmured, "You mean like those shots Uncle Joe takes of rocks?" "Exactly right," said Daisy, peering through the camera at Emmy. "Very fuzzy, very, very boring." By the time Daisy was ready to transfer the pictures from the camera, Jessie had the rest of the document ready to go. He had deliberately chosen a font that was hard to read. The cousins examined Daisy's photographs. They finally agreed on the most boring one for their sign. "Not even Professor Anderson would be able to tell this is a baby dragon," Jessie said. He selected the picture and dropped it in at the bottom of the document. Then he saved it and printed out 12 copies. It read, "Lost your lizard? Found. In the area of an old dairy farm. 1 green lizard. 4 inches long, greenish blue. Contact Jessie and Daisy at 555-2245. And that's where we're going to have to stop today, boys and girls. We will finish Chapter 6 tomorrow.